of markets and money. In the interview, Nobel Economics Prize winner Alvin Roth.
Professor Roth, you are a karate enthusiast, a high school dropout, a Nobel laureate of economics. Life-changing experiences seem to be quite normal for you. Does that affect your work?
I think everyone has life-changing experiences. That's what life is about. Surely it affects my work. But I didn't really drop out of high school. I went on and had further education. So I am not a self-educated man. I went to college, I went to graduate school. I have a pretty ordinary education.
Why did you opt for economics?
Well, I didn't study economics. I was educated as an engineer, and I studied operations research. And operations research, when I studied it, was mostly about the kind of operations that went on in a factory, in a business. So one decision maker trying to organize all his operations. But I was interested in how people interact with each other and how to coordinate activity, and that led me naturally to economics.
How much does economics have to do with reality? I mean, is it just theory, or does it also have to do with reality?
Oh, economics has very much to do with reality. Markets are ancient human artifacts. We've been making markets probably as long as we've been making languages, which are also human artifacts, and often we think of them as things that we can't change, that we just have to accept. But market design, the kind of economics that I've worked on and many of my colleagues have, is about fixing markets when they're broken, making them work better, and creating markets where they're needed.
What kind of markets are broken? What do you mean by that?
Well, the most unusual market that I've worked on in the United States is what we now call kidney exchange. In the United States, as in most of the world, it's against the law to buy and sell organs for transplantation, but there's a great need for transplantation, and the available supply of organs doesn't meet it. But for kidneys, it's one of the sources of organs is live donation. You have two kidneys, and if you're as healthy as I hope you are, then you could give a kidney to someone you love and save their life. But sometimes you can't give a kidney to who you love, even though you're healthy enough to give someone a kidney, but your kidney doesn't match the person who needs it. And I might be in the same situation, and I could give a kidney to your patient, and you could give a kidney to mine, and that's a kidney exchange. That's become a standard form of transplantation now in the United States. But it's against the law here in Germany. So Germany hasn't been able to participate in this increased access to transplantation that is found in Holland and in England and elsewhere in the EU.
So you created a market for kidney donation.
A market is a bigger thing than just involving money. I study matching markets where other things go on. There are other market clearing institutions than just money. So kidneys happen to be a market in which we forbid the use of money to decide who gets which kidney. But nevertheless, transactions, exchanges, can increase the availability of transplants. If you want to give a kidney to someone and I want to give a kidney to someone, but we can't, but I can give a kidney to your patient and you can give a kidney to mine, that creates two more transplants that wouldn't have happened otherwise through exchange.
Talking about markets, can everything be put down to markets?
Well, so I use the word market more broadly than many people do. Often in economics we think of commodity markets, things that a price is sufficient. But many markets aren't like that. Job markets aren't like that. Radio Deutsche Welle doesn't hire its broadcasters and interviewers by lowering the wage until just enough people
Hopefully
want
not.
the job. Presumably your job is a very desirable one that lots of people would like to have, but Deutsche Welle chose you, and they couldn't just choose you, you had to choose them, you had other opportunities. So labor markets, employment, is not a market that's set only by the price, by the wage, but it has lots of other features. And once you start thinking of markets that way, many of the ways that we coordinate and cooperate and compete are markets.
But do you see also markets going wrong, like for example financial markets, which seems to be very much governed by greed, that one has the impression? Well,
markets, again, are human artifacts, and sometimes they work the way we want and sometimes they don't, and then we should try to fix them. So it's certainly true that markets have rules that change and can be changed and can be regulated. And all of those are things we should always be thinking about, monitoring the markets and see if they're doing the job that we want them to do.
Are you sometimes worried about the markets, what markets are doing?
Sure, that's what market designers do. We worry about what markets are doing and see if we can fix them, whether they're working as well as they should. So, for instance, I think a lot about labor markets and whether employment opportunities are being distributed the way we would like them to be. When there's an economic crisis, there's one of the painful parts of economic crises is unemployment. And a lot of unemployment has to do just with the suppression of economic activity, with lack of economic activity. But even during a recession, there are employers looking for workers who can't find them, and workers qualified for the jobs looking for work who can't find jobs. And that's a coordination problem. So in various marketplaces, my colleagues and I have helped develop labor market clearinghouses that help people find jobs.
Now here in Europe, many people are unemployed in countries like Greece or Spain. So what methods would you apply to help these kind of people in the labor market?
So I don't know enough about European economies to give a clear answer, but there are long-term and there are short-term problems. Some of the long-term problems require years to repair, how to find the right education for the workforce, how to allow people to move around. So the EU now allows lots of mobility, but of course in the EU there are barriers to mobility that don't exist in the United States, where we speak the same language across the whole continent. So it's not easy to move from Greece to Germany in order to find employment. But easing barriers to transportation, making a common currency, finding common languages that people work in, all of these will help increase labor mobility, and that's something that over the longer term has certainly helped the American economy to deal with unemployment.
Finding partners nowadays is also a topic for many people.
Absolutely.
How do I find the correct or the right partner?
Yeah.
Could you help them with that as well?
Well, so there are. Finding the right partner is a little like finding the right job. These are matching markets. My colleagues and I have mostly worked on employment, trying to ease congestion, for instance, in the market for new economists or the market for new doctors. So most new doctors in the United States get their first jobs through a clearinghouse that I've helped to design. But increasingly, we're seeing internet dating sites, which are matching markets that have rules and experience some of the same problems of congestion, for example, that labor markets can experience. And colleagues of mine have studied these and sometimes suggested design interventions that help them work better.
When they work better, what does it mean, for example?
Well, so dating markets is a good example. One of the things that people who study dating markets notice is that women who have attractive pictures often get many more emails than they can answer. And this causes men whose emails aren't being answered to send more emails. So there starts to be lots of congestion on these sites. Not so much information is passing back and forth between all the messages. One of the things we did in the economics job market is we allowed job candidates to send a small number of signals to jobs they were particularly interested in that helped employers sort among the many applications they got to understand which ones to interview. So I have some colleagues who made the same kind of intervention on a dating website. They gave people a limited number of virtual roses, they called them, and you could send a message that had a rose, and a message that had a virtual rose attached was a little bit of a special message because you only had very few roses. So those messages got more attention and made it easier to cut through the congestion.
Are there any markets which you would like to improve, where you look at and think, I could apply my theories to these markets, I could improve them?
Well, I keep thinking about transplantation. I'm doing a great deal of work on that and have been for some years. My colleagues and I have also done a lot of work on assigning children to schools in American cities. That's an important problem. And we're learning how to do it better, and we've helped design school choice systems in New York City and in Boston and some other big American cities. And we're hoping to learn how to do that better. Certainly, you brought up financial markets. A student of mine named Eric Budish has been thinking a lot lately about how computerized trading has change the need for market rules, and how rules of the market that worked well when human beings were doing all the trading may not work as well at the high speeds at which computers trade. So I think that we're probably going to see some changes in the rules of financial markets, how transactions are made, that will help them work better.
From an economic standpoint, are we living in a stable world, or are you worried about the economy?
Well, those aren't the only possibilities. I think we're not living in a stable world. Things are changing all the time, but I'm not terribly worried. We have some crises, but by and large, prosperity has been improving over the last century a great deal. I think few people, even if they're worried about present times, would prefer to live 100 years ago than today. Mm-hmm. And so I think the long-term trend is that we encounter crises, but we learn to overcome them. There's a changing economic environment, but by and large, it helps us live our lives better. So I'm optimistic.
And what does it mean for your science, for the economic science? Does it have to change as well?
Absolutely. Economics is a young science, first of all. We don't know very much. But we're learning about it. And some of the things we're learning are not the things that you often read about in the newspaper, but more engineering kinds of things. We're learning how to make things work better. The environment changes, the challenges change, and we learn more. We're a very early science. It's an exciting thing to study. It's an important thing to study. Economics is about what people do. Mm-hmm. But there are still big limits to what we understand about that.
Thank you very much for that interview.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.